This is unacceptable. Houston, Texas, October 2010, George H.W. Bush Presidential Library. The voice was sharp, entitled, a wealthy donor in an expensive suit standing beside his Mercedes S-Class, keys dangling from the hand of the valet attendant who just parked his car. Marcus Williams, 63 years old, wearing a red valet vest over a white shirt, stood with professional composure as the man continued his complaint. "You took 7 minutes," the donor said, checking his Rolex Presidential. 7 minutes to park a car at a Presidential Library fundraiser. This is the Bush Library, for God's sake. I expect better service. He looked Marcus up and down, gray hair, weathered face, age showing. And frankly, someone younger, someone faster. This is embarrassing. Marcus simply nodded. "Yes, sir, I apologize for the delay. Traffic was heavy tonight." "That's not my problem. That's a management problem." The donor turned toward the library entrance where other wealthy guests were arriving in their luxury vehicles. "Someone needs to talk to whoever hired the staff for tonight." He walked away, leaving Marcus standing alone in the parking lot, holding the Mercedes keys. Marcus had heard it before. Too old, too slow. Past your prime. Get out of the way for younger men. He'd been hearing it for 15 years, since leaving the Navy in 1995 at age 48, since trying to transition to civilian aviation and finding airlines preferred 25-year-old pilots, since taking whatever jobs he could find to pay the bills. Security guard, delivery driver, and now, at 63, valet parking attendant at events. It paid $15 an hour plus tips. He needed the work. His wife had medical bills. Medicare didn't cover everything. So Marcus took the complaints, kept his head down, and did his job. But 20 feet away, near the library entrance, someone had been watching the entire exchange. Former President George H.W. Bush, 86 years. Old, sat in his wheelchair, greeting arriving guests. A Parkinson's-like condition called vascular Parkinsonism had weakened his legs over the past few years, confining him to the wheelchair for most public appearances. But his mind was sharp, his eyes missed nothing, and something about that valet attendant caught his attention. The way Marcus stood, straight-backed despite the dismissal, shoulders square, feet positioned with military precision. The way he moved, economical, practiced, no wasted motion. The way he'd taken the complaint, professional composure, no argument, quiet dignity. Bush knew that bearing. He'd seen it in the mirror for 70 years. That was military posture, officer posture. After the wealthy donor disappeared into the library, Bush wheeled himself toward the valet stand. "Excuse me, son," Bush said, his voice still strong despite his age. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus turned, immediately recognized the former president, and straightened, unconsciously, a reflexive military response to superior authority that never quite leaves. "Yes, sir, Mr. President." "Where did you serve?" Marcus hesitated, surprised by the question. "Sir?" "Military. I can tell you served. Where and when?" "Navy, sir. 1985 to 1995, 10 years. Bush smiled, that warm, genuine smile that had won elections. "Navy man, good. What did you do?" "Naval aviator, sir. Fighter pilot, VFA-81 Sunliners, Strike Fighter Squadron 81, FA-18 Hornet." Bush's smile faded into something more serious, more respectful. "You flew Hornets?" "Yes, sir." "In combat?" Marcus paused. Then, "Yes, sir. Gulf War, USS Saratoga, 1991, 52 combat sorties." The Houston evening seemed to go quiet. Traffic noise faded. The arriving guests became background. George H.W. Bush, who as president had ordered Operation Desert Storm, who had commanded the coalition that liberated Kuwait, who had sent 500,000 American troops, including this man, into combat, stared at the valet parking attendant holding Mercedes keys. "You flew combat missions in Desert Storm," Bush said quietly. "The war I ordered as Commander-in-Chief." "Yes, Mr. President." "And now you're parking cars at my library." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Yes, sir. It's honest work. I needed a job. The event coordinator hired me for tonight. Bush was silent for a long moment. Then, Marcus. Your name's Marcus, right? Marcus Williams, sir. Marcus, I need you to do me a favor. After this event is over, after the last car is parked, I want you to come find me inside. We need to talk. Can you do that? Sir, I don't want to take up your time. That wasn't a request, son. That's an order. From your former commander-in-chief. Marcus smiled slightly, the first smile he'd had all evening. Yes, sir, Mr. President. Flashback. February 1991. USS Saratoga, Persian Gulf. 20 years earlier, Marcus Williams was a very different man. Lieutenant Marcus Williams, 33 years old, sat in the cockpit of his FA-18C Hornet on the deck of the USS Saratoga, a Forrestal-class supercarrier steaming in the Persian Gulf. It was over 400 hours, dark, cold. Pre-dawn brief before another combat mission over Iraq. Desert Storm had been raging for 3 weeks. The air campaign was relentless, hundreds of coalition aircraft striking Iraqi positions, command centers, air defenses. Marcus had already flown 18 combat sorties, 18 times into hostile airspace, 18 times back, but it never got easier. Williams, you're on sweep package, his squadron commander said during the brief. Cap, combat air patrol, over the push. Keep Iraqi fighters off our strike aircraft. They're getting desperate, launching everything they have left. MiG-25s, MiG-29s. You see hostile aircraft, you engage. Clear? Clear, sir. 2 hours later, Marcus was at 25,000 feet, over southern Iraq, flying with his wingman, Lieutenant Danny Chen. Their mission, protect the strike package, F-15Es and A-6 intruders, hitting a Republican Guard position below. That's when Iraqi air defense came alive. SAM launch, surface-to-air missile, SA-6 gainful, coming up from the desert, tracking fast. Marcus's radar warning receiver screamed. He reacted instantly. Chaff, flares, hard turn, dive. Years of training compressed into 3 seconds of survival instinct. The missile missed. Barely. Then his wingman's voice on radio. Bandits, bandits, 2 o'clock high, MiG-29s, 2 of them. Marcus looked up. 2 Iraqi Fulcrums diving toward the strike package. Fast. Aggressive. Suicide mission. They knew they'd probably die, but they were trying to take out American aircraft first. I'm engaged, Marcus called. He pulled the Hornet into a climb, selected AIM-7 Sparrow, radar-guided missile, locked the lead MiG. Fox 1, missile away. The Sparrow tracked, guided, closed. Impact. The MiG-29 exploded in midair, massive fireball at 20,000 feet, debris spiraling toward the desert below. 1 down. The second MiG, seeing his wingman die, turned hard toward Marcus. Aggressive, desperate, trying to get close enough for a gun kill, but Marcus was better trained, better equipped, and flying the most capable fighter in the world. He turned inside the MiG's turn radius, selected AIM-9 Sidewinder heat-seeking missile, listened for the tone. Locked. Fox 2. The Sidewinder came off the rail, tracked the MiG's exhaust, hit. Second explosion, second kill. Marcus had just shot down 2 Iraqi aircraft in 90 seconds. Splash 2, his wingman called. Williams, you just became an ace. But Marcus didn't celebrate. He checked his fuel, getting low from the hard maneuvering. He checked the strike package, mission complete, heading home. He checked for more threats. Clear. RTB, he called. Return to base, back to the Saratoga, landing on a carrier at night. Low. On fuel, adrenaline still pumping, was one of the hardest things a pilot could do. But Marcus had done it hundreds of times. Trapwire 3, perfect landing, engines down. He climbed out of the cockpit, legs shaking, not from fear, just from adrenaline dump. His crew chief was waiting. Sir, they're saying you got 2 MiGs. That true? Yeah, Marcus said quietly. That's true. By the time Desert Storm ended 6 weeks later, Marcus had flown 52 combat sorties, the most in his squadron. He'd earned the Distinguished Flying Cross for the double MiG kill. He'd protected countless strike packages. He'd done his duty. And he'd come home alive. Back to Houston. October 2010. 3 hours after the encounter in the parking lot, after the last luxury car had been parked and the fundraiser was winding down, Marcus Williams walked into the George H.W. Bush Presidential Library. The event was exclusive. 200 wealthy donors, politicians, military officers, all paying 1,000 plun per se plate to support the library's programs. Marcus, in his valet vest, felt completely out of place. A Secret Service agent stopped him at the door. "Sir, this event is—" "He's with me." George H.W. Bush's voice came from across the room. The former president wheeled himself over, Barbara Bush at his side. "Marcus, come in. I want you to meet some people." For the next hour, Marcus Williams stood awkwardly in a corner while President Bush introduced him to donors, military leaders, politicians. "This is Lieutenant Marcus Williams, retired, Navy fighter pilot, flew FA-18 Hornets in Desert Storm, 52 combat sorties, 2 Iraqi aircraft shot down, Distinguished Flying Cross." Every single person Bush introduced him to had the same reaction, shock that this man had been parking their cars an hour ago. Finally, Barbara pulled her husband aside. "George, what are you doing?" "What I should have done 20 years ago, Bar, recognizing the people who actually won that war." He wheeled. Back to Marcus, gestured to an empty seat. "Sit down, son. Tell me your story. Not the medals. The real story. What happened after you came home?" Marcus sat. And for the first time in 15 years, he told someone the truth. He told President Bush about coming home from Desert Storm in 1991 as a decorated combat pilot, expecting opportunities, respect, a future in aviation. He told him about staying in the Navy until 1995, flying peacetime missions, training younger pilots, serving honorably for 10 years total. He told him about leaving the Navy at 48 years old, too old for airlines which wanted pilots in their 20s who'd give them 30 years of service, too experienced for entry-level corporate flying jobs, too proud to take handouts. He told him about his wife Linda being diagnosed with breast cancer in 1998, about the medical bills that Medicare didn't cover, about depleting their savings, about taking whatever jobs he could find, security guard, delivery driver, eventually valet parking. He told him about the nightmares that still came sometimes, the SAM launches, the MiG fights, the friends who didn't come home, about PTSD that the VA said wasn't service-connected because he hadn't been in ground combat. He told him about being invisible, about people seeing a 63-year-old valet attendant and never knowing that 20 years earlier he'd been a warrior in the sky, protecting American lives, doing what his commander-in-chief had ordered. "And tonight," Marcus said, "some guy in a suit told me I'm too old and too slow. And you know what, Mr. President? Maybe he's right. Maybe I am too old. Maybe this is all there is now." Bush listened to every word, never interrupted, never dismissed, just listened. When Marcus finished, Bush was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out and gripped Marcus's hand, firm, strong, despite his age. "Son, let me tell you something. I was a Navy pilot too. TBM Avenger torpedo bomber, 1943 to 1945. September 2nd, 1944, I got shot down over the Pacific. Bailed out of a burning plane, floated in a raft for 4 hours before a submarine picked me up. Thought I was going to die that day." He paused. "I know what it means to fly combat missions. I know what it means to be scared and do it anyway. And I know what it means to come home and wonder if anyone remembers what you did." Bush looked directly at Marcus. "You're not too old. You're not too slow. You're a warrior who served his country with honor. And the fact that you're parking cars to take care of your wife, that's not weakness, son. That's strength. That's character." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "And I'm going to fix this," Bush said. "Starting now." 2 weeks later, the announcement. President George H.W. Bush held a press conference at his library. National media attended. C-SPAN carried it live. Standing beside Bush's wheelchair, in a suit borrowed from one of Bush's aides, Marcus Williams. "Ladies and gentlemen," Bush began, "2 weeks ago I met a man who changed my perspective. His name is Marcus Williams. He's a retired Navy fighter pilot who flew combat missions in Operation Desert Storm, the war I ordered as president. He shot down 2 Iraqi aircraft. He flew 52 combat sorties. He earned the Distinguished Flying Cross." The cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward. And when I met him, he was parking cars at a fundraiser, working for $15 an hour, because that's the only job he could find. Bush paused. Let that sink in. "This is unacceptable. We send men and women to war. We ask them to risk their lives. And when they come home, we forget them. We let them struggle. We let them become invisible." He looked at Marcus. "Not anymore. Today I'm announcing the creation of the Gulf War Veterans Recognition and Employment Initiative, a partnership between the Bush Library, major corporations, and veteran organizations. Our mission: find every Gulf War veteran who's struggling to find work and connect them with employment opportunities worthy of their service." The room erupted in applause. "Marcus Williams will be the program's first director," Bush continued, "and I'm personally donating $1 million to get it started. Because 20 years ago, Marcus did what I asked him to do as Commander-in-Chief. Now it's my turn to do what he needs." After the press conference, Marcus stood with President and Mrs. Bush for photos. Barbara hugged him, whispered, "George hasn't stopped talking about you for 2 weeks. You gave him purpose again." Marcus whispered back, "He gave me dignity again." 2012. 2 years later. The Gulf War Veterans Initiative expanded nationally. Corporations signed on. Boeing, Lockheed Martin, American Airlines, hiring Gulf War veterans for positions matching their skills. Hundreds of veterans found work. Thousands got benefits assistance. The program became a model for veteran employment nationwide. Marcus Williams ran it from an office in the Bush Library. He hired a staff of 12, all Gulf War veterans themselves. They held job fairs, training programs, advocacy campaigns, and every month President Bush would wheel himself to Marcus's office, knock on the door and say, "How we doing, Lieutenant?" "Good, sir. Helped 23 veterans find jobs this month." "Outstanding. Keep it up." But more than the professional relationship, they became friends. Bush would invite Marcus to family events at Kennebunkport. Marcus would visit Bush in the hospital when his health declined. They'd talk about flying, Bush's Gwalitwixt stories, Marcus's Gulf War stories, the brotherhood of pilots across generations. November 30th, 2018. Houston. George Herbert Walker. Bush died at age 94 in Houston. The world mourned. Presidents, dignitaries, world leaders attended the funeral, and among the military honor guard carrying Bush's casket, by special request of the Bush family, Marcus Williams. He wore his old Navy dress blues, updated with his current age and medals. At 71 years old, Marcus stood straight-backed, shoulders square, as he'd stood in that parking lot 8 years earlier. As they carried the casket, Marcus thought about that night in 2010, the wealthy donor's complaint, the valet vest, the feeling of invisibility, and then he thought about President Bush rolling over in his wheelchair asking, "Where did you serve?" That simple question, asked with genuine respect, had changed everything. The funeral procession moved slowly through Houston. Thousands lined the streets, flags waved, people saluted, and Marcus Williams, former valet parking attendant, former invisible man, former forgotten veteran, carried his commander-in-chief one final time. At the graveside after the service, Barbara Bush took Marcus's hand. "He loved you, you know," she said. "You reminded him why he'd served, why it all mattered." Marcus's voice broke. "He saved me. Ma'am, I was drowning, and he threw me a lifeline." "No," Barbara said firmly, "you both saved each other." Present day, 2024. Marcus Williams is 77 years old now. The Gulf War Veterans Initiative still operates, now under a new director, but guided by Marcus's vision. Thousands of veterans have found meaningful employment. Hundreds of thousands have received support. And on his desk, in his home office in Houston, Marcus keeps 2 photographs. The first, Marcus in the cockpit of his VFA-81 Hornet on the USS Saratoga, 1991, young and confident, ready for combat. The second, Marcus standing with President George H.W. Bush at the 2010 press conference, both smiling, both warriors, both brothers. Between the photographs, in a small frame, the red valet vest from that October night in 2010. Marcus keeps it as a reminder, not of humiliation, but of transformation. Because sometimes being dismissed leads to being discovered. Sometimes the person who sees you as too old is standing right next to the person who sees you as just right. And sometimes all it takes is one person, one president, one leader, one human being, asking the simple question, where did you serve? Marcus Williams's story reminds us, never judge someone by their current position. That valet might be a combat pilot. That janitor might be a Medal of Honor recipient. That security guard might have saved lives you'll never know about. Treat everyone with dignity. Ask their story. And when you learn who they really are, honor them. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe to Empowering Stories to honor our veterans. Have you ever discovered someone's incredible background after initially dismissing them? Share your experience in the comments. Remember, the person parking your car might have once ruled the skies. Just ask. Honor our veterans, all of them.